I think we'll have the new McDonald's fascist fries.
My name is Brittlestar, not really.
And I'm Sandy Garasino, really.
And this is Canada Watching U.S. News. Well, hi, thanks for watching and or listening to Canada Watching U.S. News. We are here. Sandy and I are joined today by a guest, and this is how exciting is it to have this particular guest? It's so exciting that Sandy reacted to my text message when I told her with the 2 exclamation points, which is a lot of emotion from Sandy.
I would have put more on if I knew you were going to talk about them on podcast. I'm really excited.
So for those of you who are watching the video, it's kind of been given away yet, but those of you who are listening to the audio version of the podcast, I'll let you know who it is. It's the amazing Alison Gill, the creator of Mueller, She Wrote, and the former military comedian and all-around good things advocate person, I think. Is that a good way to describe you, Alison, do you think?
Thank you. Yeah, good things advocate person.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm going to put it on my business card.
That's a good idea. It invites conversation.
GTAP. I like it.
Was the acronym spell anything? Good things.
GTAP. What?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can have the one for free. That's
Thanks.
So I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. It's as the title suggests, it's Canada Watching U.S. News. So we've been watching, biting our fingernails, sitting on the edges of our Chesterfields, watching what's happening in the U.S. With the election, and so many things have been shocking. So many things have been bewildering. So many things have I've never been more incredulous in my life. All of my incredulity is almost used up. But one of the things that caught my eye recently, which I wanted to talk to you about, is there's the Lincoln Project, and there's another one as well, I think, that have an ad out that is basically showing women giving knowing nods to each other as they're at the voting booth, voting for Kamala, saying, and then the tag at the end says, "You'll never know how you voted." Maybe we'll run the ad if we can, Owen, and then we'll talk about it after that.
You still voting for him?
Hell yeah.
What about your wife?
She doesn't like him, but she's voting for him.
Same with mine.
And the tag at the end, "Your vote is your secret, he'll never know." I just as a side, I like how they paint the guys as absolute dirtbags.
Did you
They just look like they look like the worst dudes
guys.
ever. No, they
come on.
don't. They look like the kind of guys I would walk into a bar and see them and I'd be like, not anywhere close to those people, please. Just somewhere else. But is this how Kamala wins? Has the U.S. election ever been so divided by gender, do we think?
Well, this is interesting because about a year and a half ago, I started talking to listeners of the Daily Beans podcast that I host about how to talk to their MAGA family members. And my idea was just don't tell anyone, because somebody at my dinner table had said, "I really want to vote for Joe Biden." It was Joe Biden at the time. But all my friends, at the bowling alley or whatever, are like super MAGA guys. And I was like, you don't have to tell them. You can go vote for Joe Biden and put your MAGA hat right back on. And so we started to do that a little by little. And because I told a story about this on my podcast in 1980, when I was 6 years old, because we didn't have childcare. My mom dragged me to the polls. She took me to all the campaign events. My dad was a staunch Reagan Republican. But my mom took me to the polls, and this is back when the poll box was made of wood, and it had like fabric curtains and metal rings. It wasn't that little cardboard thing. And she had her head outside the curtain, and she said, "I'll be right back." And she said, remember, in here, no man can tell me what to say. And that always stuck with me as a young, I was 6 years old or something, if I'm dating myself now. And so then somebody made a cartoon, somebody drew that cartoon for me, and I tweeted it out beginning of the summer, I think. And I said, Republican women, your vote is a secret. And I put that cartoon up there. No man could tell me what to do. It got 180,000 likes. It went totally viral. And then I started getting calls from people at PACs like Lincoln Project and some more of the, Conservatives for Kamala PACs talking about creating a PAC called the Secret Vote PAC. It never really came to fruition because there were so many other PACs that people were trying to create at the time. And also, I didn't want to be associated with a PAC because at the time I was a part of the White House Correspondents Association, and you can't be associated with a PAC if you're doing White House correspondence. But I'm so glad that this message has gotten legs because I think it's a real thing. People in real life, I think, probably want to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, or even, more Democrats down the ballot, though they're probably more likely to split the ticket, but are afraid of the backlash they'll get from their friends. And so this is a real phenomenon, and I think it will make a huge difference. I think it did in 2020 when we saw the suburbs go for Joe Biden. I think those were those women, possibly married to MAGA men, who cast their vote for Joe Biden in 2020. I think we might see a bigger response this time because of the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Question that I have, Allison, is, and this might be a more muted effect than what you've just described, but I wonder if that's also true of men. Like, I'm thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger has come out endorsing Harris this morning, and of course we know of the movement to get sort of moderate Republicans. And to sort of create there's the new hot phrase of the day, which by the time I'm saying it means it's probably old, but the whole thing about permission structure to create the environment in which it's okay to be a regular Republican guy and vote for Harris. Do you think there's anything to that, or is the expectation that that's going to be too small to be material?
Well, that's what kicked it off for me, right? Was my family member who I told to vote in secret was a dude. And he was worried about his dude bro friends that, beating him up or whatever when they found out. But I think that, as far as the permission structure goes, there's a whole great coalition of Republicans like Olivia Troy, but Republican men too, like Adam Kinzinger, as you said, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dick Cheney. What? We're in the same tent as AOC and Dick Cheney. It's a big coalition. And I think that permission structure is important. I remember I interviewed Miles Taylor for his book, Blowback. He was in the Trump administration. He was the one who wrote the anonymous Lodestar Washington Post op-ed and then wrote an anonymous book, A Warning, that came out. And, he put it in such easy terms to understand about the permission structure. He says it's economics 101 right now. And this was back a while ago. Right now, the price of dissent is very high. If you are a Republican, you come out against Donald Trump, the price is what happened to Liz Cheney, for example. She got voted out. Kinzinger lost his district.
Your career's over.
But he said, economics 101, how do you decrease the price of something? By increasing the supply. And so we need to increase the supply of dissent from Republicans. And as you're pointing out, Sandy, probably particularly Republican men, and that lowers the cost of dissent. And I think that we're seeing that. I've never seen anything like this in American politics, with the amount of Republicans endorsing a Democrat for president. And they made a really great point of it at the DNC.
It'll be, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Sandy. No, you're smarter than I am. Go for it.
No, I'm not. One of the things that I thought was interesting about that ad, which for the listeners to the podcast was mainly audio, so we didn't get to see, but I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with the ad now anyway, of the married women going in and voting against what they what is perceived. And it is interesting. This is a real effect. I think, is it not the case that statistically the finding is that single women are vote more Democratic as a group, and married women vote more Republican, i.e. their views tend to move to align with their husbands rather than their husbands moving to align with theirs. Is that what the research says, or are you aware of any of that kind of trend?
I think that's the vibe, at least. You know, like when my mom and dad met, my mom was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and my dad was a Cleveland Browns fan. She was Lutheran and he was Catholic, and she ended up being a Catholic Cleveland Browns fan, which, if you understand the rivalry between the Browns and the Steelers, that's a big thing. But she made a point to tell me that in the voting booth, it was a different story because the impact is much more, it has a bigger impact on our lives. But I do think that the research shows that us childless cat ladies tend to vote more Democratic. And that could be a combination of a ton of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that women just vote how their husbands vote. But you know, there's a lot of other things to take into consideration about religion and all that. But yeah, I think that the research does show that. Why, I think, would be a really interesting study to conduct after, especially this election, because I do think we're going to get a lot of secret votes for Harris.
One of the things that...
Go ahead. Is that a phenomenon that's specific to this election like this, and maybe this not even just this election, but this past since 2016? Is it something that's really ramped up since then, or is it something that we feel has been around for a long? I mean, I understand like your mom's point in case where she said, no man tells you what to do in here. You can do whatever you want in here. But was it this pronounced in previous elections, do we think, or is it literally a result of Trump and the whole MAGA, machoism?
My guess would be it's more prevalent now, and mostly because of the danger of saying that you're going to buck your husband's vote or your spouse's vote, or the danger of like the man in my family who would feel like he was in physical danger from casting the wrong vote. The political violence rhetoric is off the charts. And so I think that probably plays a role in why this might be more prevalent and why we have somebody like Lincoln Project making ads like this, and why my tweet went viral is because I think the danger is more real than it used to be. People didn't used to beat people up over who they voted for, that wasn't lighting drop boxes on fire and having a coup. So I think that's probably more prevalent now. Again, another interesting study to conduct after this is all said and done.
It's really kind of it's deeply concerning, and as you know, deeply concerning for everybody who's watching from the outside as well. One of the things that I'm kind of, if I were the Lincoln Project or some other interested group, I think I would have gone a step further. I would have shown not just the couple at the voting booth. I would have rewound the tape and showed them leaving the driveway as their daughter is going off with some totally loser hoser guy who's hoser is a Canadian term, but a total
I'm familiar with hoser.
A total like as the vice presidential candidate says, dipshit guy. And, she's going off on her afternoon, whatever, with this guy. And the parents are watching this and thinking, oh my God, what if she gets knocked up? And then they go to the voting booth. Like, I really do want to be able to. Or alternatively, one of the things that I've never understood is why guys are not more sensitive to, like, guys have been a huge beneficiary of reproductive freedom of women. I mean, there's always a man involved. If there is not, if there's not forced if there's not a forced situation or incest or something like that, it's a consensual situation, and the guys are on the hook for child support, or used to be, I guess, in the
Sure.
olden days. I'm really surprised that there isn't more kind of resonance about, this is going to. Do I
Right. Where's
really
the
want
ad
to
of
be?
the guy having to write his child support payment every month? Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
well, because honestly, because I think they think that MAGA will either help them get
Yeah.
an abortion or won't make them pay child support. I mean, they want to end no fault divorce for that reason.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the items in Project 2025 is to, prevent having to pay palimony and child support to for unwanted pregnancies as to name one thing. But part of the whole plan, right, is to trap women, to not have to give them a penny and force them to have birth, so that we can increase our human capital stock and have workers that are going to replace the immigrants that they're going to deport. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole big plan, right?
Because everybody wants the white kids to be picking fruit and
it's
cleaning
unrealistic,
houses.
but yeah.
Well, they don't. It's
don't
not a
think
lot
that
of
far.
second and third level thinking on that
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
Not saying
So-
there's anything wrong with those people doing it, except they would do a really bad job. But let's move on.
Right, but I mean, if you coupled it with a message, here's this guy who's having to pay these child support payments, and if you think Donald Trump cares enough about you to, then we don't know what to tell you. But I think the motivations behind a lot of these political ads and the conversations that people are having with potential voters is we're not trying to change anybody's mind who's MAGA.
Mhm.
And I've told my listeners, don't waste your time on
No.
MAGA. Talk to the people who might not normally
Mhm.
vote or who don't know who Steve Bannon is, or you might sit this one out because they just aren't into politics, or they shut it out. A lot of people shut it out because it's so stressful.
Yeah.
Talk to those folks. They're not as immutable as a MAGA. I mean, it's a cult. It's hard. It's impossible to talk to people like that. So
It is. There's no reasoning. We've had conversations previously. We talked to John Cryer last week, and as he pointed out, you could Trump supporters, MAGA supporters could hear something horrible directly from Trump's mouth and or from someone in that same orbit, and it wouldn't matter. They just don't. It doesn't. There's a belief system that's been firmly entrenched, and they can't get out of it now, and they can't. There's no way for them to easily save face, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But one other further thing is just the gender division is one thing with the ads saying, he'll never know. And then you bring up the point of not wanting to vote against, what your bros want you to, or think you're voting for. That, voting for Kamala is going to make you some sort of lesser man. I can't decide if especially in American politics, it's very prevalent in American politics, if it's just been all candidates have been kind of macho candidates now. Or if it's and now it's like you see previously with Hillary Clinton and now with Kamala, you've got this sort of feminine side coming in, and even with Joe Biden being much more open about making sure people get proper rights and not being bigoted or racist or whatever, and you see the benefits of that. But is it because that's misconstrued as weakness, like giving in? Is it part of the? I guess what I'm asking is it part of that threat that a segment of the population, largely white dudes, have, where they feel like they're being nudged out, and is that a big player in why it's so hard for them to admit that they're not going to vote for Trump?
yeah, and there's been some great books about this. Ruth Ben-Ghiat's Strongman and Brian Klaus's Corruptible, Who Gets Power and Why They Seek It. And you talk about the white men in the country feeling like they're being nudged out. That's the great replacement theory.
Right.
That was one of the biggest impeti behind the attack on the Capitol. Those folks didn't come from ruby red districts. They came from purple districts, afraid that they're being taken over and pushed out. That's why in Charlottesville, you heard chants echoing back to Nazi Germany that you will not replace us, the Jews will not replace us. They are terrified of being a minority because they know how they've been treating minorities in this country and marginalized communities since our founding. So that, I think, is one of the underlying messages. And that's what Trump exploits, especially in that Madison Square Garden hate rally, where I mean, they went after everybody. But that's why their number one issue is immigration, and that the others are poisoning the blood of our country and destroying the fabric of our society, and that America is for Americans, having, I guess, really short memories about where their families came from, because unless they're indigenous, they all came from somewhere. And so that's the strong man fallacy, right? That only a strong man can save us. Only one person can save us, and that is just the playbook for autocracy.
And of course, not to get too after school special, but I mean, it really is the most sign of strength. The biggest sign of strength is to, of course, vote for what's fair for everybody and vote your own mind as opposed to what you think is what you should be doing to stay cool or tough or the big man and all that kind of thing. Separate note as well, the Madison Square Garden thing was bonkers. This might be a dumb question. If it is, we'll edit it out and no one will know how dumb I am. But the Madison Square Garden rally was so much similar to the 1939 rally that they had of 20,000 people in Madison Square Garden. That were like with the German American Bund and
the Nazi rally,
the Nazi
openly
rally.
Nazi rally.
Yeah. I feel there's often so many people giving, and especially in media, giving the benefit of the doubt. Like, well, yes, it's happening just like that one did. Yes, they're saying a lot of the same words, but it's not, obviously it's not. And I think it seems outrageous to me that the general public can't look at that and go, oh, that's too far. Like, there doesn't seem to be any line that seems to be too far anymore. It really seems to stick around to the whole Trump, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any voters. It's very much like there's no more line and they just keep going. And for whatever reason, we're kind of bewildered and blinded to it. I don't get it. It's more of a statement than anything, but I'm willing to hear some hope.
Well, I think it's because we're noobs. We're the new kids on the block, right? We haven't learned these lessons ourselves, and that's why Germany's like, oh, hello. And or why in 2016, when Russia was sending out misinformation and disinformation, interfering in our election, Ukraine is like, are you new? Like, and we're like, yeah, we are. We're a baby democracy. And a lot of democracies don't make it out of the baby stage. And we would do well to learn the lessons of other democracies that have and what they did and what they were able to overcome. But even the national anthem at that Madison Square Garden rally was somehow fascisty. Like, I don't know if it was arranged by Goebbels, but like it had this weird edge, this weird evil edge to it, and the imagery and the idolatry that they were showing was just it was just creepy. Seemed super propaganda-y to me. And I think even if people don't make that connection, I think the fact that I think what was said at that rally has resonated. There's a huge backlash against the comments that the comedian made.
For listeners, there was air quotes being made there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, but even if you're really super into racist comedy, those tropes are like the 70s. Like, come up with something fresh, for God's sakes. If you're gonna, if you're gonna do, we need fresh racist remarks. No, like
watermelon eaters. Oh my God.
It was just, it was awful. And it really has, I think, opened a lot of people's eyes to what was, and it wasn't just him. There were other people at the rally saying, calling people MRFers and six sons of bitches. Like, it was horrible. And he went after not just the Puerto Ricans, but as you mentioned, Black people with that watermelon comment. My God, how disgusting and vile. He went after Jews. He went after Muslims, Palestinians, like everybody. was on the chopping block there. And I think that, so regardless of whether people make the obvious connection to that 1939 rally, I think it upset enough people to kind of wake us up to what this MAGA party is about and what Trump's vision for America is.
Well, let's hope. Alison, one of the things that I really enjoy your commentary on, there are two things that have really shocked me in, let's say the post or the era from 2016 continuing on to where we are now, which is the really abject failure of the news media. And I think back to the nonstop. Remember when the emails were on the front pages for every day for almost the entire that entire campaign, which is shocking to think in what's happened since. But so the failure of the media, and now the collapse of the media and media structures. But one of the things I especially like your commentary on and your analysis of is also these legal cases and what's happening with the courts and what appear. I'm astonished. I'm just gobsmacked as a former trial lawyer to see what the U.S. Supreme Court is doing and what the uncertainty. I would have been very confident that the courts would be a final guardrail at the end of the day. I don't have anywhere near that confidence now, but I'm interested in any thoughts you have on those subjects.
Well, yeah, the Supreme Court has been purchased. And we do have some senators trying to sound the alarm bells. We do have President Joe Biden wanting to do court reform. Vice President Harris would, of course, run with that baton. But, when you talk about the media, the privatization of the media is not unlike the privatization of healthcare. For example, when you are in charge of healthcare and your number one concern is money and the bottom line and your shareholders, you don't care as much about health outcomes. But where we have the Department of Veterans Affairs, for example, which is direct government care, it's not even like Medicare. You don't go to a private doctor and have people pay for it. You go to the government building and have a government doctor and they provide care to you. Their number one concern is your health and your health outcomes because they're working on a budget. We see it with prisons, the privatization of prisons. It incentivizes Republicans to put more people in jail because they and their buddies make more money off of that. Privatization of schools. Well, now we have the privatization, the media, the corporate media, where their focus is their shareholders and their bottom line, not getting the truth out to the American people. That's a secondary or even tertiary concern. It's clicks and likes and money and engagement. And that is their number one goal. And when that is your goal, fear sells more than hope and truth 100 times out of 100. It's why Facebook put, for ad sales, put 7 times the weight on an anger emoji than it does on a like or a love emoji. It's driven by money. And I think that when we talk about here and overturning Citizens United and we have to get money out of politics, I think we need to get money out of media. At least have one national news service.
Yeah.
Like we want just one public health option, force everybody else to compete. And I think there's a huge hunger for the truth in media. And I think that's why content creators and independent journalists are doing so well right now. And everybody's so angry with the corporate media, with the lack of, with Bezos just pulling the Harris endorsement from the Washington Post or the LA Times, or watching these cable news networks bring on guys like Gerdusky who tell Mehdi Hassan that he hopes his pager doesn't blow up. Like, that's why we have crap like that, is because it gets engagement, whether you love it or hate it. And that's the bottom line.
So I think, and I know your time's limited, but I just want to finish off a couple of questions with, I think regardless if Kamala wins, hopefully, or Trump wins, it feels like there's going to be a push for changes. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I feel like there's going to be a push for changes like that. Focus on, a national news service or whatever, or just a change of perspective by those people who feel like we, with this terrible things happen, we need to never let this happen again. We need to get out of this hole. Or, oh my God, that terrible thing almost happened. We need to make sure we don't get into this hole. It reminds me of back in 2016 of being told constantly that, as Sandy kind of alluded to, there's going to be checks and balances. Don't worry. If he wins, there's checks and balances. And you find out none of those checks or balances are actual things. They're just a couple of guys who are doing the right thing, a couple of people who are doing the right thing, hopefully. Do you think there's going to be many changes after, regardless who wins?
Well, I'm hoping there's court reform that we talked about, that the Supreme Court has to be held to the same ethical standards as the federal district courts and federal appellate courts. And I think, we did a little bit of that when we did the 2022 Electoral Count Reform Act that President Biden signed, making it more difficult to have a coup on January 6th. But there's a lot that needs to be done, a lot of reform. But here, we've got this very robust First Amendment. And so walking the line down, it's the constant choice in the United States between safety and liberty. And we have to always make sure, I hear a lot of people like, throw him in jail. And I'm like, that goes against everything that Democrats have been fighting for decades. We don't just put people in jail and ask questions later. There's a process. There are due process. There's rights for criminal defendants. And we have Justice Sotomayor talked about it during the immunity arguments. She's like, look, our system isn't perfect, but there are checks at every step of the way to prevent rogue prosecutors that Trump warns about coming in and going crazy with the indictments against former presidents. We have grand juries, we have petit juries, we have judges, we have appellate courts, we have the Supreme Court. It's why these Trump trials are taking so long, is because he is benefiting from the rights of criminal defendants.
All the protections that a criminal defendant has. He's got gold-plated.
They're there for innocent people. And if we curb those too much, then we risk putting more innocent people in jail. And so there's always that fine line, but there definitely needs to be, I think, some more reform. I agree with you 100%, at least as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. They shouldn't be able to just take bribes.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys do the right thing and figure it out.
Me too.
Speaking as your neighbors, we're going to do something really quick here just for fun and much more lighthearted, if that's okay with you, if that's all right with you, Alison. At the end of the episode, we have a little clip that we'll use for socials, and it's usually a silly question. This question this week is, Donald Trump recently did a PR event at a drive-thru at a McDonald's where he pretended to work at a drive-thru. I would like to know, what new menu items would Trump put on the McDonald's menu?
You all remember up there in Canada, back, I think post 9/11 in the cafeteria at Congress, they changed French fries to freedom fries.
Yes. We remember vividly.
I think we'll have the new McDonald's fascist fries.
I like that. That was good. Sandy, do you have any suggestions?
It's a secret until they serve you. It'll be a surprise. The E. coli sauce.
Oh, I was going to thought you were talking about like an indictment meal or something like that.
Well, I thought you were talking about the secret between Mike Johnson and Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's a secret. It's an unhappy meal.
I would have also accepted Trader Tots, McFury, McFib, or my favorite, the McJan 6, which is just regular 6 nuggets, but it's only served in January and you have to break into the McDonald's to get them.
I like it. That's a good one.
Thanks so much for your time, Alison. Sandy and I, maybe we'll chat for a little bit further, but we really appreciate your time, Alison, tremendously. And we'll be watching the election as it unfolds. Maybe crying. I don't know. Maybe nervous crying. I don't know. Maybe
I need you to be strong, because you are my emotional support Canadians.
Okay.
We're with you. We're with you. We're all Godspeed, America.
Exactly. We'll try not to turn it into a drinking game watching it,
and
hopefully.
Don't think I didn't miss that Chesterfield mention at the very beginning.
Good. That was a test.
Oh, the smokes. He's sitting on the edge of his smokes.
As a huge Bare Naked Ladies fan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe
go.
a nice Chesterfield or an Ottoman. I see
That's
you.
pretty good.
I want you to know.
Well done.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Allison.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
There you go. So, Sandy, what do you think?
Well, I'm such a fan of Mueller, She Wrote. She is so whip smart and so on it. And I don't have her Substack listed, but I'm sure you can put it in the show notes. She's just, her research is just phenomenal. So in addition to being clever and smart and fast, the research is tremendous.
I know. I often feel like when you and I do the show that I'm at an intellectual disadvantage. And this was no different. I just I felt one more step down the ladder this time. I was like, God damn it. They're just passing me now. I was looking through Allison's bio. It's amazing. She was like full on military. She's super smart. She's a member of Mensa. She did the whole American thing where
surprised.
I know, exactly. Ran out of money during college, joined the military, coming from a family with a strong military tradition. That was kind of her way out. Of course, she had a terrible sexual assault. She was drugged and sexually assaulted, so raped by a military member, which turned into a whole thing, obviously, for her, that sort of like a cause for her, which was great. And I mean, as far as great can go, it's a terrible way to put that, but you know what I'm saying. And she's really kind of, she's got a bachelor's in behavioral science, obtained a master's degree as well. She's worked for Sprint, like the telecommunications company. She's toured with a band. She's a comedian who, when she started Mueller, She Wrote, there was a sold out 13-city tour.
Wow.
I mean, you and I are slackers in comparison.
And she's got like 800,000 followers on Twitter. So.
No. I'm starting to just be jealous of her now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, who are we? How did we get her? Did we pay her? She's great.
Gosh, I hope not. I know what the budget of the show is. So what do we think is going to happen? What do we think is going to happen if Trump wins?
Oh, if Trump wins, all bets are off. I mean, all of the guardrails are gone. All the people who we saw or we didn't see, they were quietly and secretly kind of reining him in. The Secretary of Defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the National Security Advisor, all the apparatus that was there, that was getting crapped on daily from people who wanted them all to resign, but actually they were very useful. Mattis, Milley, Kelly, and a number of other people. It's weird how Bill Barr kind of bought into the corruption until he could close up and see the oncoming train of an indictment against him personally if he went along with this stolen election thing. So he finally put on the brakes there. But so many of the figures who were brakes on Donald Trump, those will all be gone. And this is going to be frightening. And I am concerned about, letting people like RFK Jr. and Elon Musk have at the government institutions, getting rid of the Department of Education and having RFK Jr. run the health department. Like what? Like really? This is going to be a catastrophe. It's just going to be. I'm just like, I can't even imagine it.
I think one of the only things that gives me a little bit of hope, or I was going to say optimism, but it's not really optimism, but just like it stops me from panicking outright at the thought of Trump winning, is that I feel that government is a much bigger ship to steer than people think. I think that you can have executive orders. There's things that can happen quickly, but these big sort of sweeping changes are harder to get moving. Even his deportation plans, it's like there's so much logistics involved in that. It's not like it's something he can just say today and tomorrow it happens. It might happen quickly, and God forbid it happens. But I mean, like I said, they're big ships. They're hard to turn. They're hard to steer. That's the only thing that makes me have a little bit of pause for hope, is that I think that there's.
But
maybe
his whole plan, and he's got his people who have been identifying thousands, tens of thousands of positions in the federal government that he's going to directly be going in and firing people.
Right.
And put in the MAGA loyalists. And of course, and one of the things that gets very little attention these days, it's kind of percolating below, just below, is what's going to happen with Congress, what's going to happen with the House of Representatives and the Senate. It's looking very iffy for the Democrats to be able to retain control of the Senate. It's interesting, isn't it, how much quieter the story is about how the House is going to go, because the Republicans only got it by a hair when they were expected. But from all the polling this was going to be a landslide in 2022, the midterm elections. This was going to be a landslide for the Republicans. They were just going to walk away and have almost a supermajority to do just about anything. I'm not hearing a lot of talk about what is the likely outcome now, and will Mike Johnson be the Speaker of the House? So much depends on that.
I think another part of that hope that I have is also as saying that they're big ships and hard to steer and hard to turn around, is that, of course, nothing that happens would be met without resistance of all types of resistance. Meaning not people out there with placards and all that kind of stuff, but meaning like just people who have office jobs who are like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do this. It's not going to be as smooth for sure as you might worry about initially.
As they think it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I do have a slight concern about is I worry about what's going to happen when Kamala gets elected. There's going to be a lot of people whose whole identity might be in jeopardy. And I get concerned about what that means. I worried that's going to turn into isolated moments of, violence or horrible stuff. And I don't know how to combat that. I don't know how to, not even combat that, but I don't know how to diffuse that. That's a better word. So that, those people, they have to be quickly pulled into the fold, I think, anyway. I don't know how, but they need to be brought in. And I think that you can sort of see that in some of Kamala's most recent speeches, is that she's really kind of saying, I'm about getting all Americans together. I'm bringing people together, and everyone should get a fair advantage. And that's something that's, absolutely missing from Trump's rhetoric.
Well, he's going to inflame it. If she wins, of course, he will not admit that she won. There's no universe in which Donald Trump will ever admit to being the loser that he is in reality. And so that he is going to incite. I mean, I actually, and I'm quite afraid of a number of other high profile individuals and what they are prepared to do in terms of inciting serious violence. And of course, we know that he's got this secret plan that he let on, that there's going to be this secret plan with Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, because it's the Speaker of the House that presents the votes, the electoral votes for certification, and which are then to be certified by the Vice President. So there's obviously a plan, and I'm sure that a huge amount of work has gone into making that plan fly better than the January 6th plan that they had last time. So I'm very concerned. It may come down to what will the Supreme Court do, and I'm just like, I don't believe, I'm not a religious person, but I would be praying that they have their come to Jesus moment and go, we will go so far, but we will not completely disgrace the history, traditions, and Constitution of the United States to enable Donald Trump to steal this election with Mike Johnson. That's what I hope for, because there will be disruption. There will be violence. There's going to be terrible things that are going to happen if Kamala Harris is elected. But right now, the ship of state is being steered by the President of the United States, who controls the military, controls the National Guard.
Mhm.
Part of the problem on January 6th was that Donald Trump controlled the National Guard. Donald Trump kept the supports from moving in to establish order. That wouldn't happen today. So there'll be probably random things and maybe some very planned things. I'm hoping that the FBI is much more prepared than they were on January 6th to deal with a lot of that. And then if Harris makes it to Inauguration Day, a lot of this kind of stuff will kind of percolate below the surface and eventually subside for the most part, but it'll always be present. That's my read.
The downstairs neighbors are a never-ending source of stress, worry, and entertainment at the same time.
Turn down the volume, please.
What are you going to do on election night, Sandy?
I'll be hiding under my bed. I can't even bear to look at this until I hear something from somebody. I mean, I'm just really, really terrified. At the same time, we've been here before, some of us we were here when Hillary Clinton lost. And the thing that I think bothers me the most, as I think back to the Hillary Clinton loss, for which I blame a lot of people on the on the left for, anyway, no, I won't go there. But we've all been there. We've lived through it. Donald Trump, I don't know whether he'll then try and amend the Constitution so that he can have more terms, but he's not going to last. First of all, because he's not interested in the job. He doesn't.
No.
He just wants to win. He doesn't actually want to do the job. So he'll be down in Mar-a-Lago, and then it'll be what's his face, J.D. Vance
running the show.
He's going to be running everything, and there's going to be a war between Thiel and Musk for control of J.D. Vance. Is my take. So,
remember when we started this show and it was supposed to be like funny?
It was going to be a comedy show.
I know. I feel we've.
But at least But okay, let's go back. Remember that day that we watched the debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yes.
And we were just like, dear God, God. And
we're in better shape now.
This is so much better. The one thing that people always said, Hillary was a terrible candidate. I don't think anybody can say that about Kamala Harris.
No, I don't think so.
I think that they've run a near flawless campaign. If this is what America is, it's what America is. Time to face it.
Well, we'll watch, and I'm sure everybody else will as well, and I'm sure we'll have our thoughts, and they might. Well, next show might be broadcast from underneath the bed, maybe. Each of us underneath our own beds.
Inside our closets.
Exactly. Thanks so much for watching and or listening to Canada Watching U.S. News. Of course, you can find us at CanadaWatchingUSNews.com, or you can subscribe with your email address, and you'll get an email notification every time there's a new episode. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting platform. Paid subscribers get to see the video. And my new glasses, which are not new. I wore them last week as well, but they're still kind of new.
Oh, they look so cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was staying over in Toronto last night, and the front desk clerk said to me, he was a cool gun guy, and he said, "I like your glasses." And I was like, oh, "Nice,
good."
See, I'm still got it.
You still got it, and
exactly.
Kamala's going to win. That's what we're going to go with.
That's what we're going to finish on. Exactly. I hope
she's going to do it.
I think so
do
too.
I do believe she will.
All right, awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye, everyone.